Guys, it's me, it's Queen Haru, and I'm coming to you today with another exciting edition of Ask An Aquarius. So if you haven't already, please smack the red subscribe button and hit the bell, okay? All right, so today we have a question from Turning Indigo in the comment section. It says here, Queen, how do we deal with grief and death? At least in your knowledge, my much wiser and older Aquarius. I lost my dad last November on the 27th. I am the only child. Him and I had a complicated relationship considering he was a Taurus. But we loved each other a lot. The days are getting closer to that day and when he died. I remember blocking out my emotions, and then I released them all through anger. I shut down and closed off. I even became suicidal. I am an Aquarius sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars with a Virgo moon and Pisces rising. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about the grief aspect, because when you're an Aquarius, anger is an easier emotion to deal with. It always is at first. As we get older, both of those vibrations become very troublesome. So that's probably why you went to anger in the first place, because it's a much easier emotion. But what needs to happen is you need to allow yourself to grieve. And you said, how do we deal with grief? You deal with grief by allowing yourself to experience it, allowing yourself to express it, allowing yourself to go through it, allowing yourself to cry. Has a lot to do with it. You have to dive into your emotions. You have to go into your emotional self, and you have to allow yourself to see what's there. For Aquarius, I always recommend journaling. Always. Because Aquarius have a hard time knowing what's wrong with us because we're so funny about our emotions and we compartmentalize them. We even hide them from ourselves. I hide my emotions from myself a lot. A lot of times I have to ask myself, Queen, what is going on? And journaling is one of the tools that I use to do so. And that's a good one for many Aquarius. So the first thing you want to do is sit down and get to the bottom of what you're feeling. So write out what you're feeling. Write what it is that was really going on inside of you. How you feel about the death. What tripped you up? Is it missing him? Is it feeling like he didn't get a chance to see something, or you wanted to say goodbye, or whatever it is that's tripping you up? You need to get that out and figure that out. You need to allow yourself to cry. That's the other piece. If you have tears welling up or coming up as you're writing or as you're going through this process, which you usually will, let them go. Grieving is something that people have the tendency to really want to stay away from because we don't want it to dip us into a depression. But grieving is absolutely necessary for your emotional health. You have to release the hurt that's inside of you from this death. The hurt that's inside of you from whatever story you have around the death as well. We always have a story going on around death. First of all, it's the fact they died in the first place. That's hard in itself. Then we have a story. We didn't get to say goodbye. It's a very common story I hear from all kinds of people. Or this person never got to see me graduate. They never got to see my child. They never got to see something they wanted to see for themselves. They wanted to go Yoruba. They never got to go. We always have these stories going on. They never got the money that they wanted. They never got the car they wanted. It was always some story around the death. And we have to look at the story. We have to look at the death. We have to grieve the loss. We have to release it. Because the person is fine. The person is in a better place. But depending upon what spiritual system that you're working with, or if you're working with no spiritual system, when we die, we generally go to what I would call a better place. You know, if you have no spiritual system, you just go back to the ethers. If you have a spiritual system, the person goes to heaven, they go to the river Styx, they go to, Valhalla, they go to the Valley of the Kings, they go somewhere. And it's usually a better place than where we are right now. So truthfully, they should be grieving us because we're the ones that are left here. But that's the thing that you want to do. You want to figure out how you feel about that aspect of it. And you have to release them. You have to let them go. But first you have to grieve. You have to allow yourself to cry. You have to allow yourself to deal with your own emotions. If you don't reconcile your own emotions, they're not going to go anywhere. What's going to happen is they're going to fester. They're going to sit inside of you, and they're going to turn into ulcers. It's going to turn into treachery. It's going to turn into cancers. It's going to turn into other issues. So the best thing to do is just to deal with it head on. Aquarius really don't like emotion. We don't like dealing with our own emotion. But when it comes to something like this, you really should. Your best bet is to allow yourself to cry and deal with the pain. And after you've released all that pain and released all that hurt, after, I would say, no more than 7 days, don't grieve very long. You know, grieving is a process. Some people will take more than 7 days. I'm just giving that as a ballpark figure because it might take you maybe 2 weeks. But I don't want you to stay stuck in the grief. You want to release the grief. And you want to move on to being happy for this person, releasing their soul, knowing that they're watching over you. You want to go to the positive aspect. And you can't go to the positive aspect while you're holding on to the grief. And you can't move on if you get stuck in a depression because of the grief. The grieving process is to release the grief. So let yourself grieve, let yourself see what emotions are there, and then allow yourself to go to the next process, which is the letting go. Your father is not ever going to leave your life. His spirit will always be with you. I guarantee that. I've done cards for people and somebody come up from 60. I had an older lady one time. She was in her 70s, I believe, like 74. And I did a reading for her, and somebody from her childhood that died came through. One of her best friends got killed in childhood, and that person came through in the reading. So these spirits do not leave us. They're always there with us. They're always looking for opportunities to talk to us, to help us, to encourage us. And if they can't speak to us, they're looking over us. They're looking out for us, put it like that, on the astral plane, on heaven, wherever you believe they are, they're there looking out for us. Okay, so it never is going to change. Your father will always be there. The only thing that changes is his body. We have a body and we have a spirit. Our body is conditional and temporary. Our spirit is unconditional and eternal. So your father's spirit is always around you. And one of the things that you'll come to terms with after you've let go of the grief is that energy is always there. They never leave us. I feel my grandmother. My grandmother died when I was 7 years old. And to this day, I feel her around me. And she leaves me little messages, to let me know that she's around me, And anybody who's a medium, anybody who can see spirits, we see these spirits all the time. We feel these spirits all the time. We sense these spirits all the time. They're always here. They're always around us. Our loved ones never leave us. That's why they always say true love never dies, because that love never goes anywhere. It's still there. It's still in their hearts and it's still in yours. So turning indigo, what I need you to do is allow yourself to grieve your father. And then I need you to release the energy and know your father is always with you. Now, that process may take you a little bit of time. Like I said, grieving is a process. Sometimes it also takes some ritual energy too. So, for example, it may take going to your father's tombstone and leaving flowers and letting him know that is, you miss him, you're there with him. Sometimes it's something you need to do, because when somebody passes over, I always do something, I always plant a tree in their honor or something like that. That's how I get mine. It's really kind of like a closure, because their body isn't here anymore. So it's kind of like almost like being in a relationship that's over. You have to get closure from it. And that's part of the grieving process, allowing the feelings to come up and getting some kind of closure. So I always plant a little tree or a flower or, do something along those lines. Go to their grave, put flowers on their grave. For my little cousin, I went to her grave and planted a flower at her grave. So it's different ways you're able to do that part of it. But it's just a matter of, doing something that's symbolic, that you're letting go, and you'll see them again. Your spirit will see their spirit again. In this life, if you're able to see spirits, that's great. But if you can't, you're going to see them again anyway. because at some point you're going to be a spirit again. So this is how we go through our grieving process, and the grieving process is not easy. It's not easy work, but it's very beneficial because, like I said, that grief doesn't go anywhere. You have to release it. You have to actively work to release it. And if you find yourself in a situation where none of this is working for you and you still can't let go of it, you need to see a grief counselor. There are people who specialize in this. They specialize in helping you move through grief from death. So you have to find someone, Google it for your town, and talk to a grief counselor. A grief counselor can help you process your feelings and talk about it and open up about it if you can't do that part by yourself. So those things are things that will definitely help you, and things that have helped me, and I've seen it help other people. So think about these concepts. There's also all kinds of books, self-help books online about grieving and death. There's lots of them. So you may want to peruse Amazon and look at the different titles. I don't really have a good book on grief and death. I usually just go through the process that I mentioned to you. I usually cry, deal with all that energy, let all that energy out, and then I do something in their honor. One of my really good, she was my friend. She started off as my client, but she became my friend. And I did the challenge for her, the Janae 7-day challenge. That was my way of honoring her. I did a 7-day kindness challenge, and I promised I would do it every year. Every year I'm going to do 7 days of kindness in her honor. That's something that helps me with my grief process, So you can do something along those lines. You have to find something that works for you, though, that makes you feel better about it. And remember what I said about grief counseling. Grief counseling is very good, and those people are trained in this particular vibration. But the biggest part of this is you allowing yourself to do the work, allowing yourself to release. Your father would not want you to hold on to that anger, that bitterness. Your father would definitely, and does definitely, I'm sure your father is somewhere watching you, hoping that you're able to release it, hoping that you're able to be happy again. Your father is somewhere looking down, wanting that for you. And the only one that can make it happen is you. Okay? I really hope that helps you. Thank you for your comments. You have great comments. And thank you for your question. If you have any more questions, please put them in the section and I'll be glad to answer them. Thanks. Bye-bye.